I was like, oh my God, I'm going to show up to like work on Tuesday where I'm teaching like, this is how you achieve your goals and this is how you like shape your mindset to improve like your work life. And then meanwhile, I'm like spread eagle, like in a thong at a dog show. Like, big lips and huge hair. It's like no woman is going to have this giant hair walking down the street. Being Kahlan Marcus, the performer.
Is that a stage name or like a real name?
It's like all my friends call me Kahlan Marcus.
Have you tried Botox?
Of course. I'm a 35-year-old man in Taiwan where everybody has Asian skin. You can put on a face and you can put on a facade even if you don't really have a high battery, but you're going to have to pay for that later.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to Metaface Talks. So today I have my friend here, and actually it's October now, which is like approximately a year we met. Halloween. Yes, it's a Halloween party. It was in Yuanshan. You were like outside a bar or something, like outside
23.
Yeah, and I was wandering with my friend, and then like we were just talking. I texted you, would you be interested in doing a podcast about like pole dancing and hobbies and consulting? And
that's crazy that it's been a year though, because I thought it was like 3 months ago.
Really?
Yeah.
It has been like a second Halloween now.
Okay, that makes sense. My name's Kahlan Marcus. I live in Taiwan. I love Taiwan. I don't really know what to say because I know the focus is like performing, pole dancing, but a lot of like, you mentioned like consulting, like a lot of that also is connected to like the mindset between.
I think it's really interesting to bring your educational psychology background into the conversation of how you had part of your career in Taiwan as like a drag performance, pole dancing and stuff.
I do consider it drag because it's like a character. Like
what's the definition of a drag queen though? Because
I mean, as somebody who's not a drag queen, I probably shouldn't be defining drag, but drag to me is like a caricature of like a persona. So it's like drag queens are people that are like Violet Chachki. At one point she was doing her makeup and she was saying, we're not trying to look like real women, we're trying to look like paintings of women. So it's like if you have a painting of a woman, you're like emphasizing the parts of her that look feminine or like emphasizing her breasts. So it's like a lot of drag queens that do like big lips and huge hair. It's like no woman is going to have this giant hair walking down the street. It's like you're a clown. You're doing like a clown performance.
Makeup,
But it's like rather than being like goofy and silly, some of them are like campy and fun. Some of them are fashionable and like trendy. So it's kind of evolved into this art form that's like a reflection of culture. So for me, being Kahlan Marcus, the performer.
Is that a stage name or like a real name?
It's like all my friends call me Kahlan Marcus. In Taiwan, I am Kahlan Marcus, but it's actually a stage name. It's not my real name.
Am I the first one who figured it out?
Yes. I had friends that knew me for years. That they would like see my ID and they're like, why is your name in Chinese on your ID? I'm like, oh, because in Taiwan, all my business and all of my official stuff is registered under my Chinese name. Because like I don't go by my biological name in Taiwan, and so since I had always been Kahlan Marcus here, even when people met me, they're like, oh, give me your IG, and I would tell them my real name, and then they would see me on IG, and then the next time I saw them, they forgot that I even had a real name. They would be like, oh yeah, Kahlan.
What helped you came up with this character name or like
out of necessity? Because in the beginning it wasn't a character, it was just on Facebook I was teaching, but I've been in university. We do student teaching for like during your undergrad you will student teach, and then after you get your degree you'll teach for a full year. You're not getting paid, you just teach in a school. And so during that year I was still in my university doing my master's in education, and I was teaching high school. So I'm teaching seniors who are 18. So some of these kids that I'm teaching are literally at my university drinking in a frat house, and I like see them and I'm like, oh my God, I work at a school where these kids are students. And they weren't even supposed to be there because they're high school students, but they would have like friends who were fresh graduates who had just started college, and their friend is like, oh, come to this college party with me, being cool to their like high school friends. And so I started having students like finding me on Facebook through my name. So I was like, okay, I need to choose a name that's completely unrelated to my real name. So I chose Kahlan Marcus. which was just based off of like names that I liked, and like I had a cousin that was named Marcus, and I had a friend that was named Kahlan, and so I just chose that name. But then when I moved to Taiwan, I started doing like modeling, and then I was doing some like concept photo shoots, because all the modeling stuff was it's very like commercial. It's like catalog. You're just wearing like very plain clothes and stuff.
But they have a bigger budget.
I like things that are visually striking and visually compelling, and I was like, okay, if I'm just doing these like catalog photo shoots where it's just like very plain basic clothes, I want to do stuff that's more conceptual. So then I started doing like, even if I was going out to bar and not performing, I would be doing makeup, and I would be wearing like chains and stuff. And over time, people just started, it became a more fully realized character. And then once I started considering myself doing drag, it was because I had a very specific mindset and very specific intention. And so everything that I wear as a boy, I want it to be stuff that like connects to the history of like men and masculinity, but doesn't make sense in modern day. So like I'll wear heels with like men's dress pants and like men's clothes, because heels were originally made for men, and then over time now it's associated as like a feminine thing. And then corsets too, like corsets were made for men.
Really? I thought it was made for women.
Corsets were originally made for men, and then women started using them and started having these like hyper exaggerated like shapes, and then it became trendy for women, so then men started going out of fashion. And then like pink too. Pink was a masculine color.
Back in where? When?
It was like within the last 100 years, like insane. And so then after that, it became super trendy. All these women were wearing like bright pink, and it became like the woman's color. I want to do things where it's like, if I wear a corset and heels and have pink makeup on my face, those are all things that were like men's things that women like claimed and took. And so I'm like, it looks really weird and it looks out of place on me, but it's like, why is that out of place? And it's just kind of like
a social experience.
Yeah. And to go back to your question about drag, it's like, that's what I think drag is. It's where you take these things that don't really make sense today or don't really make sense in this context, and you exaggerate them and inflate them, and then they become
an art form, I think.
Yeah.
What got you into makeup the first place? For drag or like for personal?
Like necessity?
Yeah. I totally get you. I did it professionally for a while.
But you're young, so when you're playing with makeup in like junior high school, at least there's like good makeup and research and like information
back
available.
In the day, I don't think there was just blog posts.
Yeah.
Not a lot of YouTube videos actually.
Yeah.
So it was just like reading Kevin Aquan, Scott Barnes, and just like the iconic makeup artists.
I actually learned makeup from drag queens, because I liked Drag Race, and I would see things, and they would be talking about like, oh, when you do this, it makes your nose smaller because of this contour, or if you do this, it brings the face forward, so it will help with like hollow eyes. So I would be like, okay, if I always had really deep circles under my eyes because I have a sleep problem. And so I was like, oh, okay, now I understand the concept. So rather than just putting on a matte powder that covers my whole face, I'm realizing that looks kind of clownish, and to me it didn't make sense because most of my face didn't have an issue. And if I'm flattening my whole face in that way, I still have the depth because now it's all the same color, but the depth is still there. So once I kind of understood that theory, it would actually inform how I like did stuff. And then it got to a point to where I was like, I was always trying to hide that I was wearing makeup. It's like, I want to wear as little as possible so that nobody can tell. But then it got to a point where I was like, I don't care if people think that I'm wearing makeup or see that I'm wearing it. I want to have fun with it. And then I started like pushing myself in terms of like the shapes and the like silhouette and the figure that I wanted to do and the skill that I had. And once I developed technical skill, then it just became like fun and art.
You have like a really specific way of doing your eye. How did you like work out the shape or the silhouette of that?
Again, it was like necessity. I was like learning how to do like eye, and I was like, oh, this is taking so long. I'm just gonna put tape, and then I would like put tape down to my eye. But I would put the tape like all the way down my face. And then when I started doing it, I was like, oh, actually, like I'm just gonna like keep going down, and I would like blend the eye all the way down. And then I just did it once as like a one-off. And then when I took the tape off and then like evened out the lines and everything, I was like, oh, this is kind of cool, because at the time I was a bit heavier, so my face was more round. And then having this really like sharp line that went all the way down my face, it added these like new angles that I found really interesting. And so then I just was like, okay, how can I take a nose contour into this eye shape? I always focused on skincare because for like under my eyes, I wasn't doing it as makeup. I was doing it to solve a problem because I really had such deep, dark circles that I would go to work and people would be like, oh, are you sick? Or I would go out and people were like, oh, you must be ill. You should go home. And I'm like, I actually feel really great tonight. Like, I rested a lot this week. I got a lot of sleep. But when you look like a zombie, and so it's like putting some like concealer under my eyes. Like also, I have like more aged skin. Like I have a lot of fine lines around my eyes and like wrinkles on my forehead. So having that, I'm like, okay, if I do makeup, how can I keep my skin as moisturized as possible? Whereas a lot of like young queens, they can put tons of like powders, and drag is typically like set with lots of powder. But if I do that, it just makes the line so much worse. So I'm always trying to figure out like,
have you tried Botox?
Of course. I'm a 35-year-old man in Taiwan where everybody has Asian skin. A lot of people say like, oh, but Botox and fillers ages you, because the conversation has kind of gotten there. But I think it's just from a place of ignorance, because I actually wanted filler, but I was offered free filler and Botox. And I was really skeptical about getting filler. And I was like, I'll start with Botox because it's just paralyzing a muscle and it's reducing movement. So I'll start there. And then after I did it, I was like really nervous and really afraid. And then it worked so well and it was like such a good result. I was like, oh, then around my eyes, I like having crow's feet. I like having small lines because my dad always had these like fine lines on his eyes. And as a kid, I remember just staring at them and I loved it, like when he would smile and stuff. So for me, I was never like, oh, I need to completely paralyze these so that when I smile, I don't have lines. Like I actually enjoy the look of it, and I think it makes you look really like joyful and happy. But that being said, when I started doing makeup, like I did drag, and then I just noticed all those fine lines, like the makeup is creasing. And so I told my doctors, like, okay, I think we can do a bit of Botox just to reduce the movement. But if you have a good doctor, they can.
What about the filler? Where were you planning on putting it?
I only put filler under my eyes in the tear trough. But also, that's the hardest place. So all of the doctors are like, oh, no, we could like fill your cheeks or we could fill your forehead to make your forehead flat. I'm like, I don't need a flat forehead. Like, what are you talking about? I just want under my eyes. They're like, oh, that's dangerous. You could go blind. Like,
yeah, that's really risky. How many performance or party have you attended? Can you do you have like a rough number?
I have no idea. Like
hundreds.
Not hundreds, but between like 50 and 100. Wow. Because I was like, before COVID, I wasn't a pole dancer. So any performances that I did were just like burlesque or stripping or dancing, or like people would ask me when I first came to Taiwan, like, oh, do you want to be a go-go? But it's like, at the time, like now there's some really good go-go's. Like Hugo, I think, was the first one that was like really muscular and looks perfect for a go-go, but he's such a good dancer too, and he would always bring in like proper dancing into his go-going. And I think that created a huge like much needed shift in Taiwan, because when I got here it was like 10 years ago, and all the go-go's were just the biggest, most muscular guys just like touching their body and like not really doing anything. It was kind of muscle worship. Whereas now the go-go's actually dance, and they can be more like femme and more sissy, and I think that was like a much needed like step forward. But I didn't want to do that. I was like, I'm not a dancer, and I didn't have a good enough body.
You're not a dancer?
No.
Back then, or just?
I still don't think I'm a dancer, but like at the time though, I would be hired for something, and it was more of like striptease or burlesque or whatever, and like bondage, like BDSM. And so before COVID started and everything shut down and the bars weren't really open, I had been performing for like 6 months. Like every single month I would have a main show, and then sometimes there would be like a smaller thing, like a charity or a friend that wanted
a charity that does burlesque and BDSM
I mean, just last week I did like a dog charity.
Yeah, I saw that on your Instagram.
Yeah, so
that's a charity. That's for charity.
That's literally for charity.
Okay, I'm supporting the wrong group.
No, and then one of my clients, I messaged her after the show. I was like, none of my clients were there, but I have an adult client that I messaged, and I was like, I think I just stripped in front of your coworker. She's like, yeah, he texted me the same thing. This is at like midnight on a Saturday. I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna show up to like work on Tuesday where I'm teaching like, this is how you achieve your goals, and this is how you like shape your mindset to improve like your work life. And then meanwhile, I'm like spread eagle, like in a thong at a dog show.
How do you pick your outfits for the show?
I mean, that one was very literal. They asked me like a week before. They're like, hey, we just realized we only have drag queens and women performing. Like, would you be interested in being like our male performer? And they're like, I was like, okay, it's a dog charity. The only thing I can think of last minute is to be a literal dog.
Like for a dog, like a literal, like homeless dog.
Not like one dog.
Oh, like a group, like a stray dog group.
Like it's called Mary's Doggies. And so they collect, like if there's like a dog that's on the street or there's somebody that doesn't have a home for a dog, they take the dogs and try to rehome them. And so a lot of the dogs have like behavioral issues, so they collect money. And so for some...
So you really did match the theme. Like
so, yeah,
dog with behavioral issues.
I took it very literally. I was like, okay, it's a dog show and you want me to do some kind of performance, but I knew I wouldn't have a pole. And for the last like couple years, all I've been doing is pole dancing. Yeah. So I was like, okay, I'll just like get a BDSM like dog mask. And then the rest of the clothes were just stuff that I already had from like previous performances or like pants that I had made that like zip off. So I was like, oh, I have a bunch of like chains, and then my friend was Kamala Harris. So I was like, Kamala, can you like walk me out on a leash? She's like, okay, but what do you want me to do? I was like, just wave at people like you're a presidential candidate on like a press tour, but you have your dog on a leash.
A lot of drag queens on the show said that being drag is really emphasizing like your authentic self. You're literally wearing a mask, so you don't have to be afraid of how you be perceived by the society. It's like another character. What do you think about it?
I don't agree. I think that for some people who don't feel comfortable in their skin, drag can be that. Yeah. It's like, okay, now I can dress up and role play this fantasy of like confidence and sexiness that I don't feel in my own skin. But actually, I'm very comfortable in my own skin.
And how do you achieve that?
As a performer, to me, I like to create art. And like my whole Instagram, it's a lot of people think I'm trying to do like nudity and like exhibitionism, but it's like I don't think being naked is sexual. Yeah. I don't think me being naked or me being in my underwear and like doing yoga or pole dancing, I don't think that's inherently sexual. It's like, why is my body sexualized? It's like, if you choose to sexualize it, that's what you're doing. In my personal life, I feel like confidence just comes from kind of realizing, kind of aligning that version of what people perceive of you and what you want to present to people. And so when you have a really big disalignment, when people show you like, oh, you're coming across as really arrogant or you're coming across as really bitchy, but in your mind, you're like, I'm the nicest person. Yeah. I'm the most caring person. If you can kind of align those things and then you hear feedback about yourself that's really in line with how you view yourself and how you want to be portrayed, of course, you're never going to please everybody and you're never going to fully be, you can't fall into the trap of constantly trying to please people or trying to get people to perceive you how you want. Like in my friend group, I'm the most bitchy one. Like I'm the one that's like the most cutting. They assign everybody in our friend group roles. They're like, okay, she's the grandma, she's the auntie, she's the little sister, I'm the big sister. Because they're like, you're really mean and you're really like brutal to everybody, but you have a lot of heart and you do care.
Do you think you're mean?
Oh, yeah, I'm super mean. But the thing is, the reason why is because I tried so hard when I came to Taiwan to be like nice and friendly and to be pleasant to people. And I would still hear like the most insane things being said about me, and then people coming up and being like, oh yeah, this person told me this. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. I'm trying so hard to be liked and to be kind and to be nice. And people just choose how they want to perceive you anyways. So at some point I just decided like, you know what? I'm not going to please other people. But with that, I became really confrontational. Like, I don't seek out confrontation. But as soon as somebody forces me into a situation where I need to defend myself, I do not care how I come across. I don't care if I come across as mean. In Taiwan, I'm an outsider. No matter what I do, no matter how good my Chinese is, no matter how long I've been here, no matter that I own a company that's a Taiwanese registered company and I pay a ton of taxes, that doesn't matter. All of my friends are like Taiwanese and Aboriginal. It's like I spend Chinese New Year's out in Luodong with my friend's family every year. And like we go to the temple and I feel like I put a lot of effort into understanding the culture and the people. But no matter what, I'm still a white guy and I'm still weird.
So do you think the geographical location really affects how you show yourself?
I think it affected my journey into how I show myself. I did a pole show with like 5 other pole performers. The first time that I performed pole like in front of people. And I was the least experienced of all of them. But all of them were doing like really difficult stuff that's like hard to like push their limits. And I was like, I'm going to do the easiest stuff I know how to do that I can make look as effortless as possible, because any pole dancer would be able to see that and be like, oh, he's doing really basic stuff. But to the general public, they can see, oh, this person's struggling and this person is effortlessly doing something. So I'm like, I'm not trying to impress other pole dancers, because it's like, what, 0.001% of the population? I'm just going to do stuff that makes me feel effortless and confident. And then the other 99% of people are going to see that and be like, oh, wow, he's so skilled at what he's doing, even when you're doing the most basic stuff.
For people who's not in the particular profession, just do the bare minimum. Honestly, show off better than if you tried really hard, but you make yourself a fool.
With everything, like I work with some of my clients, some of them have been in like an industry for a long time. And then I'm like, okay, let's look at your resume. And looking at their resume, like, yeah, you can see the length of time, but they don't portray their skills in the best way. Other people might have like the least amount of experience and the least amount of knowledge of the field, but they're really good at pinpointing like, this shows my skills in organization, this shows my skills in management, and they're really good at portraying those things. So it's like, if I'm hiring one of them, I'm not going to choose the person with 10 years of experience when they can't even communicate their value.
So you identify as like an introvert, right?
Yeah, definitely.
But do you think it's really common for people to perceive you as like an extrovert?
In high school, I became an extrovert because I had been homeschooled for 4 years. And when I went to school, I was terrified. Just like, I still knew all of the kids because I had gone to elementary school with them, and I had played sports with them through junior high school. But in going to high school, I became really extroverted because I noticed the teachers, the kids that were like talking, the teachers would just like grade them easier, but the kids that were probably smarter and did better work, they would be quiet, and then when they got hung up on something, they were afraid to ask. So kids that were just copying stuff straight out of the book, if that's what the teacher was looking for, that kid knew because he talked to the teacher. But then the kid that was like, oh, I think this teacher wants me to interpret this on my own. So they're actually smarter and doing a higher level of work. But because they're not...
That's not what society wants.
Exactly. So with me, I just became very extroverted. And all through college, I thought like, oh yeah, I'm an extrovert, because I got really good at it. I got really good at role playing. Like, this is how you have energy. But at the same time, I always describe to people, because I know a lot of people that think they're extrovert like I did. And I ask them, it's like, okay, extroverts are people that when they have no energy and they start interacting with other people,
they get energy.
That energy like grows. Like your battery recharges from being around other people. If you're introverted, being around other people will drain your battery. So it's like, you can put on a face and you can put on a facade even if you don't really have a high battery, but you're going to have to pay for that later. And I noticed that's what was happening to me. That's how I realized I was introverted, because I could work all week and I would be tired and I would need a break, but I'm like, oh, it's Friday, I'm going to go out with my friends. On Saturday, we're going to go to this pool party. But I would be so dead on Sunday and so dead on Monday and Tuesday, and I would just spend like every moment I could just like trying to be alone and to recharge myself. I like got rid of my FOMO just by being like, is this event right now worth depleting the last 20% of my battery and then being dead for 4 days? Or should I accept that this party isn't for me? This day drinking boat trip on this Saturday isn't really what I need to do today. Like, instead, I'm just going to go home and play with my cat and knit and like actually have 100% battery for whatever I'm going to do Sunday.
But sometimes like role playing, being an expert is really important.
It got me through college.
But how do you role play? Like, a lot of introverts doesn't know how to or what's the like easiest or most superficial way you could achieve besides like having another mindset? But like, what do you think would help you become more extroverted? With
performance, that's what I do, because at the time in high school and college, in high school I kind of knew that I was putting it on, but by college I had gotten so used to like pleasing teachers and becoming social and having friends and being successful. I was in like I had 3 minors and 1 major.
Wow.
So I was in like...
What are the other minors?
I have a English major with minors in education, psychology, and Asian studies.
Oh.
Even though I understand that I'm not an extrovert, I can still enter the mindset of being like, this is what people expect to see. This is the social game that you need to play in this event. Yeah. So if I'm going to my friend's event and I'm in a costume, I'm doing drag just to support him, I know that I'm a clown and I'm some kind of thing for people to gawk out, so people are going to want to come up to me and talk to me. That's not the time for me to be like, oh, sorry, I just want to be with my friends tonight. It's like, I put on this character for a reason to support my friend, so I'm going to kind of play along and just, even though I feel uncomfortable, even though I want to be alone, it's like, sit down, have a conversation, just enjoy yourself. But in my lessons, whether I'm working with a 3-year-old child or a 50-year-old adult, I always try to 100% of my attention to be on this person. So I always lose track of time because I'm like, and I'll tell myself before the class, like, okay, I have to finish this right at 12 because I have another client at 12:30. Yeah. I need to be there. But as soon as I put my phone down and we start talking, I'll look at my phone. I'm like, oh my God, it's 12:20. I have to go because 100% of my attention is on that person. And I think living in the moment and being really connected with the conversations that you're having and the people that you're spending this moment with is a huge advantage when you try to role play being an extrovert. Yeah. Like if you're out and you're trying to be like sociable and fun, just be 100% in that moment and don't think about like, oh, what does this person think of me, or what's this going to look like later, or what was I doing before? You can't worry too much about the future or the past. If you're just in that moment, it's like, what am I experiencing right now?
Do you think you're like hyper focused, or do you think you just like dissociate yourself with other people's opinion?
I don't dissociate from their opinion, but I don't really care.
Yeah.
Because like I said, when I tried to please people,
it didn't work. Yeah, it will never.
And then
work.
When I started being genuine, I lost some friends that are like, oh, you're too mean or bitchy. And so having that feeling of like hearing something that somebody said about me behind my back, and then it was like a positive thing that was even nicer than anything she's ever said to my face, I was like, that's what I want. Like any negative thing that I ever say about anybody, I'm going to say it to their face. Anytime that I'm talking about somebody behind their back, it's either going to be things I've already said to them. So I'm not saying like, oh, behind their back, you can only say positive stuff. I'll say like, oh, my friend Byron was being such a bitch about this situation. But to his face, I'm not going to be like, yeah, you were right. They treated you badly. I'm going to tell him to his face, you were being a bitch in that situation. Yeah. But also with that, I'll also like be an advocate for my friends. And I'll also be the person that's like being like, even though I think this person was being unreasonable in this situation, I've also been in that space emotionally, and I know why they were doing that.
Do you get desensibilized after all the hype, all the parties after a long time? Mostly clubs play the same music. I haven't been to a club for like 2 years. I was back there yesterday, and the exact same thing. Yeah. Same DJ, same music, everything had to change. It's like the time froze there.
That's the thing about like artists. Like it's when you go to a club and a DJ's like, there's this one DJ, always at Maji, and he always plays the most like basic, like general people will know this song and most people will like it. It's been on a top 10 radio hit sometime in the last 50 years. And so he's like, oh, you heard it here first, Tyler's Water. It's like, dude, this song has been everywhere for a year. What do you mean you heard it here first? And he's like, oh, New Cardi, you heard it. It's like, like, dude, she released the song 6 months ago and the video came out a month ago. Nobody heard it here first. Like, but it's just playing like the lowest common denominator. But then you have a DJ that's like finding that spot of like where can I play music that people know and people recognize so people can be along for the ride, and then bring it into a space that it's like, oh, this is nice. I haven't heard this. And then I love that feeling when I hear somebody play something and I'm like, I don't know what this is. And I look it up on YouTube and it has like 160 views. I'm like, that's a good DJ, because they were able to, it's not just like playing the most bizarre out there stuff. It's like, how can you play stuff that people are familiar with and the sound makes sense and people can like really get into it? And then you take them into a space that it's like, where am I? This is new. This is interesting.
Is it easy to find people in clubs now, or just...
like dating wise?
Yeah. How do people date in Taiwan? I have no idea, honestly.
I don't either.
Lincoln.
Like, when I got here, I remember people complaining like, oh, everybody just uses dating apps now. Dating scene has just become like people that you know through a friend or that you know through social media. It's like you see somebody on Instagram and then they tag this person, or you see an event, or you just like follow somebody random, and then you just slowly see how your circles align. But for me, that's how dating's always been. It's never been like, oh, I'm going out
actively looking.
Yeah, I've never actively looked for somebody. And like some people that I've dated, it's like when I date somebody new, it's completely different than the person I dated previously. My friends are always like, oh, is this person your type? I'm like, no. And they're like, but you dated this person, they're really similar. I'm like, yeah, but that person's not my type. And then the next person I date is wildly different. And so for me, like going out, I don't even know how I would try to hook up with somebody by going out, because it's like, I don't know what space I would go to, because I don't have a specific type of person I'm looking for. You need to remove your ego, and you need to take away how you want to be perceived and portrayed, and try to just like embrace that people aren't going to really accept you or like you or whatever, and that's okay. And if you just try to fully be in the moment 100% and just enjoy the time that you have without worry about the past or stress about the future, then you can just actually genuinely enjoy your life as it is.
Thank you, guys. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and share to your friends who need to hear this.